I want to go ahead and move on from, I guess, the fun stuff, and going to have the duration of the show is going to get into a decidedly more social and political turn as we do here on Steppin Marcus. Jay, would be remiss if we didn't get something in like that. I'm going to start off. I'm going to talk about the juror in the George Zimmerman trial who said that George Zimmerman got away with murder. I'm going to talk about her in a minute. I'm going to come back to her. But first, I want to talk about the conservative sister that's on television giving throwing darts at Sabrina Fuller, the mother of Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin's mother gave a powerful and emotional plea on Friday to the National Urban League. Conservative black token du jour Crystal Wright, not my words, this is coming from news1.com, has coined the phrase conservative black chick. This is Sabrina Fuller, the mother of Trayvon Martin, who took to Twitter and attacked this person because of the things that was said. Now, the grieving mother of Trayvon Martin has been accused of being opportunistic and dishonest. Crystal Wright is this conservative black chick, and she cruelly accused Sabrina Fulton of manufacturing a race war and suggests that she, quote, move on and get on with writing her book. She is wow. Move on from her murdered child. First of all, that is so impossibly insensitive. I don't even know how to read the rest of the story, but I will continue. She's going on and mimicking the crass and troll tactics of some of the GOP brethren, right? Agreed and retweeted followers who claimed that Sabrina Fulton didn't care about Trayvon Martin till she copyrighted his name and made trash cans of money. There's a tweet here from Crystal Wright, who is the so-called conservative black chick. Says that the Martin family and the media, it's time for them to move on from this manufactured race war or get on writing the books. There's another quote that says, boom, there it is, when you're looking at some of the other stuff that was said. She also says that Sabrina Fulton told Trayvon he had to live with his dad and he didn't want to. Just really crazy and bugged out stuff that this chick is saying. Now, Wright, who takes pride in being the, quote, triple minority, black, female, and Republican, was a regular commentator on HLN during the Zimmerman trial, obviously selected to be the lone black voice who would support the former Neighborhood Watch captain's version of the events or lies, depending on which side you fall on, that placed the 17-year-old Trayvon Martin on trial from the grave. And recalling the moment that she handed the driver a photo of Trayvon and said, quote, that's my son too, Fulton said, and her message is resonating the right way. Quote, my message to you is please use my story, please use my tragedy, please use my broken heart to say to yourself, we cannot let this happen to anybody else's child, end quote. And this woman is having issues with it. Kate, I'm going to come to you first. We did lose Carlton Banks for the night, so we will not have him going forward, but I'm going to have any of the listeners who are on MixLR who want to call in, and y'all are still there, and you're welcome to call 804-402-2893. Those folks that are on TuneIn and Shoutcast and LegacyInternetRadio.com. I want to get folks in on this because, you know, this is important stuff, and I want to understand why people who agree with this woman would agree with her. So, Dub, we talked before a little bit about this. Why don't you give me your opinion?
Well, you know, the one thing, you know what we have to do as a community really is we do have to respect her view of it. I am familiar with Crystal Wright. I have seen her on a number of shows giving her opinion, and I mean, we pretty much know where she stands on a lot of things that deal with the black community or things that affect, I'll say, inner city individuals. We have to respect her view just like we have to respect, just like I would assume or hope that she will respect the views of people on the other side of the tracks. The thing is, and what I told you earlier, is that just because she shares the same color as you and I, we can't expect her to already be in a specific box. This is her opinion. You know, she may not be familiar with some of the things that you and I are familiar with. She may not even be familiar with certain situations that led to the death of Trayvon Martin. So, in that regard, I just have to respect her. I don't agree with nothing that she's saying, but I have to respect her. But we have to also understand that there are a number of people that look like you and I that share her same view. You know, it's unfortunate that she would, you know, kind of, I won't say attack Serena Fulton, but at this particular time, especially you're still grieving over her son, and not really finding justice in the court system, not too long after this particular situation. And then you have the juror last week, you know, kind of giving her view on the situation. Is kind of insensitive to kind of attack Miss Fulton at this particular time. But again, I really don't expect Crystal Wright to share my view, your view, or a number of the people that are in my particular circle.
Well, let me stop you for a second. I hear where you're going, and I know you got a lot to say, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to keep the conversation going. Let me ask you a question. Make your answer short, and then I'm gonna go to Tamika on this one. One of her followers to her tweets, which was a white male based on the photograph in his tweeted, quote, "Gotta love parents never paid attention until his corpse brought fame and bucks." Wright was quick to tweet her approval to this. So when you say that you don't agree with her, but you respect her right to say what she's got to say, which I agree with free speech. I think the KKK can do what they want to do because I absolutely agree with free speech. But when you see stuff like this, doesn't it just drive you nuts when you realize that when you look at the United States that we live in, amongst conservatives and in some independent circles, but certainly amongst conservatives, George Zimmerman right now is outpolling Barack Obama. There are more Republicans and conservatives who view George Zimmerman, who killed an unarmed teenager, view him more favorably than they view the President of the United States. And it's basically pointed out by this tweet from this white male who's agreeing with her, and she states her agreement with his tweet. Doug? Understand
something. He follows her, right?
Right.
So, and I would venture to say that a majority of the people that follow Mrs. Wright are people that agree with her, you know, agree with the things that, or the message and the direction that she tries to do. So that doesn't surprise me that someone that follows her on Twitter would actually approve or comment on that and have that type of a comment. So that doesn't surprise me. It does not surprise me. I mean, it don't surprise me. And you know as well as I do, if we go to some of these conservative websites, the comments, the bashing of people on the other side, or people that have a differing view, the racist comments or what have you. I mean, it's gotten to the point now where, you know, you have to expect that these types of things, I guarantee that this guy that made the comment doesn't follow someone such as a Warren Valentine, Al Sharpton, a number of other different people that have a differing view. So, to be honest with you, it doesn't surprise me.
Tamika, what's your thoughts, man? We got this lady who she is not a fan of Sabrina Fulton. She alludes to the fact that she didn't care about her child until he was dead, and now she's making money. She's tweeting out. She's got people who is agreeing with her tweets. It's a black female who says that she's got all three minorities, black, female, and Republican. You're a black female. I'm guessing you're not Republican. When you hear the sister speaking the way she's speaking, what's your thoughts on her?
Well, I really think that she's out of order. I feel like what is her basis for saying that Sabrina Fuller doesn't care for her child? You know, who are you to say that this mother is just here to make money off of her dead child? I saw a tweet or a reply to a tweet where she was saying that she's basing some of her statements off the fact that Sabrina Fulton made her son go live with his father. This is a 16, 17-year-old boy. At some point, maybe he needed to go live with his father. Maybe he needed that male presence. That doesn't mean that she doesn't love her child any less. You know, I only wonder if, you know, Miss Wright has children of her own. And if her own children were taken away from her the same way Sabrina Fulton lost her child, would she feel the same way?
You know, what strikes me is, I mean, you touched on something that I was thinking about, you know, the fact that Trayvon Martin was visiting his dad, and they've been consistently using the phrase visiting his dad, so we don't know if he was literally visiting or actually living with his father. And it just goes to the differences in the cultures that we have, because, you know, some of our families aren't together, but clearly, you know, Tracy Martin and Sabrina Fulton are together as parents. There's no question about that. They may not have been together as a couple. They're certainly together as parents. And it doesn't really matter where Trayvon lived if both of his parents loved him, which clearly they did. So for these folks to take this presumptuous take on the fact, you know, or not even the fact, on whether he was a loved child or not, to me is blasphemy for this woman to come out and say this. And to me, it's sad, because it parroted a lot of what's said on the right side of some of these conservative radio shows, where these people make these just outlandish statements about the dead child who was basically going home. I mean, we don't need to rehash. We don't need to rehash the facts. We know what the facts are, Dub. But you alluded to a minute ago about the juror B29, who is described as a mid to late 30s Puerto Rican woman, goes by the first name of Maddie, 36 actually, nursing student from Chicago. She's got several children. I think her oldest is 20 years old, and she went on the interview circuit last week, which is a week after the first juror went on the interview circuit, and she's talking about this new one, B29, Maddie, is now saying that they allowed a murderer to go free. My words, but I'm paraphrasing what she said, which essentially kind of blows my mind. Quote, "I was a juror that was going to give them the hung jury. I fought to the end. That's where I felt confused, where if a person kills someone, then you get charged for it. But as the law was read to me, if you have no proof that he killed him intentionally, then you cannot say he's guilty." End quote, Dub. I got a lot of issues with this lady. I'm not going to really get into them until I hear from you first, and Tamika will speak after me. Dub, you got the first word on B29.
Well, let me make the connection real quick. Go back to Christian Wright, that whole situation. And this just goes as far as dissemination of information. From what I understood, Trayvon was supposed to be going back to see his mother that day, and due to whatever, that's why he was still in Sanford on that Sunday. So, just thinking about that and people not having the correct information, that just goes to show you, someone put in there, she booted Trayvon out of her home. That's incorrect. But to go toward this particular juror one, I think that I don't think she understood the amount of control or the amount of responsibility that she had, because at the end of the day, she could have been that one juror if she fully, wholeheartedly, steadfast believed that this was the situation. She could have held out and allowed it to be a hung jury. But here's something that I think is not really being spoken about, and this is just my own theory. That particular juror that came out that did the interview with Anderson Cooper, from what I understand, her husband is an attorney or something to that effect. And I would bet 90% of my income that she may have been the foreman in that juror's box. So I think that the juror last week succumbed to pressure, and I don't think that it did any good by her coming out stating that she felt bad because they basically let a murderer go free. I think it's a little ingenuous. I don't understand her angle of why she would come out and say that, because now, even though I know internally she was stating that she couldn't eat, she couldn't sleep, it was really wearing on her, if in fact she felt that way, she could have held out. I honestly think that she could have held out and allowed it to be a hung jury, and we wouldn't really be in this type of situation. I feel bad for her because she has to live with this for the rest of her life. I don't think that it.
Let me stop you there. Let me stop you there because I want to get to Mika in. First of all, I'll say this: I don't feel bad for her. I don't feel bad for her in the least bit because of what you just said. She could have hung out, held out. If she honestly felt that this man was guilty of something, then you don't convict him. And here's where, well, you know what? I'm gonna let Tamika speak. She's a law student. I don't know how versed she is on this particular case. She can share whether she is or she isn't, but I know she's a law student. What's your thoughts on this juror? I'll just, I won't give my opinion just yet. What's your thoughts on this juror?
This particular juror in question, B29, I question her motives as to why she needs to make a public statement to talk about how bad she feels about the vote that she made. If it's almost like she's trying to justify herself publicly and convince herself out loud that maybe she did the right thing. But, at the end of the day, I agree with you guys. If she really felt that, she wanted to convict, then she could have held out. But we probably still would have been in the same situation because a hung jury does not, or it ends in a mistrial. And that doesn't necessarily mean that another trial is going to happen. They didn't want to bring these charges in the first place. So the likelihood of them bringing another charge, if there had been a mistrial, is probably slim to none anyways.
Well, I mean, I would trust you on the issues with regards to law simply because you're studying it. It's always been my understanding that when you have a mistrial, the prosecution has the right to either retry or not retry, which is essentially what you just said. I would think because of public pressure that they probably would retry. It's a moot point now because we don't know. But my thing is this. If you really felt strongly, and, the fact that you were the lone minority person on this jury, I don't really care about that. To me, that's coincidence. If you are a person who really feels strongly that this person is guilty of something, then you do not say not guilty. It really is that simple, because we get into this whole I got to follow the law stuff. And as a law student, I respect the fact that you may agree with that. I don't know if you do. You can tell me if you do. If you don't, that's fine. But I also believe in something called common sense. The law, you kiss my ass with the law for real. Seriously. Basically, we talking about common sense. And you don't get called onto a jury unless you exhibit some level of common sense in jury selection. And common sense tells me that once you go through the evidence of this case, when you got an unarmed boy walking through the rain and you got a man in a car that calls 911 and 911 says stand down, and the 911 listens to you say he's running, and then you chase after him, and then the boy ends up dead, I don't understand how that's not a no-brainer. Because if the boy is running, he's running because you're there. And then the boy ends up dead. He probably ends up dead because of whatever interaction that you created. So why do we assume that you're standing your ground instead of the boy standing his ground? And the juror obviously agrees with that, or else she wouldn't have come out and said that she agrees that this man got away with murder.
Well, here's the thing.
Hold up, Dub. Tamika, go ahead.
Here's the thing with the problem. We all know that Zimmerman is guilty of something. The problem is, and just like the juror, the problem is in the instructions that they're given. They're only allowed to consider certain things. And, they were given instructions for second-degree murder and they were given instructions for manslaughter. Taking a look at those instructions based on the evidence that the state presented, it does not meet every single part. If you only meet 2 of 3, then you can't convict that person. Now, it's clear that, based on other things, I looked at other jury instructions, I'm really not understanding why they only opted for second-degree murder and manslaughter when they could have opted for criminally negligent homicide, which is clearly something that he did because his act of negligence caused this boy's death. They could have opted for that. At the very least, they could have opted for assault and battery. At the very least.
They could have gotten some. Kate, I'm going to come to you in a minute. Tony hits us on the Mixed LR page. She was appalled that the juror said that she was hurt as Sabrina Fuller is. And she agrees with you, Tamika, that guilt is certainly a heavy burden. K-Dub, get in there.
Well, what I was going to say was that I agree wholeheartedly with what you said. But, speaking to some people that, know the law, and I'm quite sure, the guests would agree with me, what I was told was when you are dealing with the law and facts and so on and so forth in a case, you have to separate what the law is from common sense, because the both do not live on the same street. I think that, it came down to the overzealous, I don't know if I'm making this word up, but I think that the prosecution was a little overzealous and overcharged him. They could have manslaughter, negligence. It could have been a number of things that they would have been able to find him guilty and give him time. But I just go back to, this particular juror. Granted, she could have held out, and we would have had I would assume we would have had a different outcome from what we had. And the only reason I say that I feel sorry for her, let me clear this up. The only reason I feel sorry for her is that, listen, she has to go through this for the rest of her life. She has children. We don't know what type of ramifications of her now coming out, what things are happening to her, because I'm quite sure that we're not the only ones that are not happy with her coming out and her explanation. So that's the only way that I kind of feel sorry for her. I don't want to see any type of ill will toward her or her family because of this, but unfortunately we live in a real world.
We're getting a hit from Tony. Thank you, Tony. We appreciate you still listening to us. Can't wait to see you here in studio 2 weeks from tonight on your second Monday of the month here on Ain't No Half Steppin' with Marcus J, live from the Den Legacy Internet Radio, the flagship show here every Monday from 7, obviously, to past 9. We're going on 10 right now, and replayed on Friday nights. Tony's hitting us up and saying she knew exactly what she was doing. The difference between right and wrong. If she believed as strongly as she says she does, we could possibly be preparing for a second trial, and then to come forward seeking sympathy. Shame on her. Shame, shame, shame on her. Tamika, I agree 100% with Tony on that. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Tony on that. She's anonymous, B29. Nobody knows who B29 is until B29 showed her face. And so, like I said, this is just a public way for her to try to justify, her decision that she made. She's trying to find a way to cope with her decision and maybe get some money out of it. Now that people know who she is, maybe people are going to want to come to her and have her tell her story, have her write her book on it. She should have just stayed anonymous and made her peace with herself, her faith, whatever, however she could, to make her peace. But, I don't feel bad for her in any way other than her family, because now that she has shown her face,
they know who she is.
People know who she is now, her children, her husband, her co-workers, all of this harassment that's going to start coming afterwards. But to comment on K-Dub, it's not that the prosecution was overzealous in their charge. They charged him correctly. The problem comes with the jury instructions with all of the lesser included charges, because there's a whole variety of them. There's about 7 to 10 other things that they could have convicted him on, but they can't convict. They can't even consider that if they're not instructed to do so. So there was faulty instructions.
Okay.
And that's why we are where we are. The law worked, the court system worked the way that it was supposed to work. It's just everything.
I don't know, Dub, if you could hear her, but what she's basically saying was that he was not overcharged, as you and I have, stated that we believe he was. And what she's basically saying that the issue is more so with the jury instructions. The jury instructions should have been that they consider the multiple lesser charges beyond the manslaughter. And you had mentioned aggravated battery. I think you had said earlier, Tamika, that they could have considered those kinds of charges. Had they been instructed to consider those, you may have gotten some sort of some sort of conviction. Dub, I'm come back to you in a minute. I know you want to get in. I got some MixLR comments that I gotta get to, and I'm gonna get back to you in a minute. Jay Grizzy is hitting us up. All of the jurors were a joke. The trial was a joke for years. The justice system has been a railroad because of the biased jury. I agree with you, K-Dub. Common sense and jury instructions are two different things. Actually, I said that. Are two different things. In the end, these jurors should feel guilty letting the child killer free. To me, they are no different than the defendant in this matter. Right is right. Bottom line, F the instruction manual. You're actually agreeing with me and not K-Dub. Tony is saying she's so tired of people making this about everyone except for who is really about, which is Trayvon Martin. Totally agree with that. Now that's actually comment number 2 of the night, right behind Ben saying that his 7-year-old wanted to listen to Ain't No Half Steppin'. And then Simone says she didn't need to come forward as having been a juror. I agree with that. And Tony's agreeing with the comment that Grizzy basically made. I actually said in social media last week when she came out, I was so furious with this woman that I actually place her in lower esteem than the woman that came out the week before. You know, the woman whose husband is a lawyer who instructed on her on how to manage the jury. And I agree with you, Dub, that she was probably the foreman. And the fact that she had the book deal got shot down because the sister on Twitter was like, hell no, you're not going to come out and disrespect this dead boy and support this shooting man and then write a book about it. And it ended up catching fire. It ended up being, the book ended up being shot down. I put this B29, I think that he was guilty, but we set him free. I put her even in lower esteem than the woman who came out the week before, because at least the woman that came out the week before believes what she was saying. And she stood by what she said. This chick, B29, 36-year-old Puerto Rican from Chicago who now lives in the Sanford, Florida area. Yo, you didn't stand by your gun, sister. You thought that this dude was guilty, but you went with the crowd. You know what I'm saying? Forget all that jury instruction stuff. You know what? The reality is, if you thought this dude was guilty, then you should have stuck to your guns and said that he was guilty. And all that jury instruction, I know we got to do our civic duty and all of that kind of stuff, but that's bull for real. K-Dub, you get the final word.
I wanted to kind of throw something out there just to be, do you think, or does anybody think that possibly, from what I understand, she has a number of kids or what have you, do we think that maybe possibly by her coming out, showing her face, so on and so forth, that maybe she looked at it as an opportunity of maybe being able to get some notoriety for her stance, or even had a book deal such as that first juror that came up? Just something that I thought about.
Well, my personal opinion to that is, if you got handlers, if you got people with you, I mean, you can have your own opinion, but the reality is, if you're a smart person and you're not going to make a decision by yourself, you're going to always 100% of the time seek counsel of people around you, whether it be your family, your homies, or an attorney. So if she spoke to anybody, then she has to know that what you just suggested just now, it ain't going to work. Because the reality is, if she comes out, especially with her being the lone minority, and she comes out and says, yeah, I thought that he was guilty, but you know what? I went along with the crew that said that he was not guilty. There's no way that she thought that would be beneficial in any way, in my personal opinion. Tamika, what you think about that?
I mean, I'm going to play the devil's advocate. Unless she was trying to bring attention to the fact that the law is faulty. With that, based on what they had, she had to let him, she had no option but to vote the way she voted. And it's not because they didn't think that he wasn't guilty. It's because of the law that they were given. So, just to play devil's advocate, maybe, she was trying to allude to that. I'm not saying that she was, but it's just a thought that I had.
I got you. I mean, I just think that, with respect to Dub, who's also playing the devil's advocate like you are, because Dub, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you don't agree with that. You're just playing the devil's advocate, right?
I'm playing devil's advocate.
He's playing devil's advocate. So I
like 8 kids.
Yeah, I mean, she got she got a ton of kids. So I don't know if that was what her motive was. Maybe it was, But I'll be honest with you, man. I don't think that it was wise for her to come out publicly and say, I thought he was guilty, but I went around with the crowd. I don't see how there's any way that could be beneficial in any way. I don't think that that's productive. And if anything, I think that's hurtful to her, and I think it's hurtful to the family of Trayvon Martin. And I stand firm on the fact that Trayvon Martin was a boy who was walking home in the rain with a hoodie on. You had a guy who spotted him, thought he was bad news. I'm okay with that so far. You thought he was bad news. You called the police. You did the right thing. You saw somebody, you thought he was bad news. You called the police. Police told you stand down. You got a gun in your pocket. Police tell you to stand down, and you choose not to. That's where you lose me. Had you stood down and waited for the police to do what they're going to do, or even if you just watched him go inside the house that he was going inside. If you watched him go inside the house that he was going inside, and then you saw him not come out, then you would have saw that he legitimately belonged where he was going. That's one way to handle it. The other way to handle it is you wait for the police to come out. The police would have come out. They would have vetted him and found that he belonged there. This would have probably had a good outcome. But no, the police told you to chill out. You chose not to chill out. You say on the 911 tape he's running. The next thing you know, the kid is dead. Once you hear he's running and you're in your car and you're not in your car no more because you're chasing the boy that's running, you become the aggressor. You become the guilty party. I don't give a damn what those jury instructions say. He's guilty, and I'm going to be mad about it forever. We need to change the stand your ground laws because they do not fairly assess the evidence based upon black and white. I said last week in my rant, this was about color. This was about black and white because Marissa Alexander sits in jail right now, a black woman who shot into the ceiling of her own house. And they said that she was not standing her ground, and she wasn't even able to use the castle doctrine that says when you're in your castle, your own home, you don't have to run, you don't have to stand, you don't have to, cower. You can protect yourself, which is what she did. She shot into the ceiling, didn't hurt nobody, but she in jail for 20 years. Trayvon Martin is dead, and George Zimmerman is home, and them punks want to give him his gun back. I ain't gonna never not be mad about this. Ain't no how Steppin with Marcus J. We're going to go ahead and take our final break of the night. When we come back, we got our rants, we got our closings, we got another hit on the wall from Tony. We're going to get on the other side. We're going to be back in a minute. Ain't no how Steppin with Marcus J with K-Dub. Miss Tamika, stay with us.